This is Rishabh Bhavani, and I'll be hosting this episode, KLAC Podcast, and I'll be interviewing Ms. Joselynne Jaques, who is the founder and lead speech language pathologist of Hope Therapies and a mentor of Kermit Learning. Ms. Joselynne has 27 diverse clinical and supervisory experiences. Today, we will talk about mental health and a growth mindset. We are focusing on self-motivation and dealing with setbacks.
Hi, Rishabh. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Why did you, as a speech therapist, become interested in mindset?
Well, I've had the pleasure over the years to work with thousands of individuals learning to communicate, their families and teachers. And I found over the time there were two groups of people. There were people who thought that they could do it and were super excited to help someone learn to communicate. And then there were people who had low expectations and seemed really discouraged. So I wanted to figure out why we had these two different groups of people, because I really wanted to help everyone learn to communicate. So mindset is highly related to how you deal with events outside of your control. Rishabh, I'm curious, what things have made you feel out of control?
Plans changing, like my family wanted to go out when I had work to do, and the outcome of tonight's Super Bowl. There are a lot of things outside of my control. And why is that important?
Yeah, the Super Bowl is super exciting. I hope your team, the Rams, win. Things out of our control. There's so many of these things. And I think it's really easy for us to get focused on those things that are outside of our control. And then we lose sight of the things that are in our control. So the things that we can control are our thoughts, our happiness, our behavior, how hard we try on something, our actions and our words. But it's really easy to get stuck into those other things. And then we can have a lot of problems.
I think that we all know that we only can control things like our actions and feelings. Why feeling out of control a concern?
Because we tend, the way our brain is programmed, to go into a default of fight or flight. So if you're stressed because something's happening outside your control, our natural reaction is to either fight that situation or to flight. And we know based on brain chemistry that our brain has a whole bunch of cortisol and stuff released. And if that's your reaction to your team losing the Super Bowl, for example, or your reaction to somebody saying a rumor about you or something like that, you can have really extreme emotions, and that stress over time adds up, especially relating in big feelings of anger or anxiety. And that can relate to you wanting to just tune out and do non-productive things. For many teenagers, that's social media, playing video games. And these are what we're finding are the major root causes of many mental health issues, especially as the pandemic has gone on. And people are finding it hard to have other places to turn to when they feel like things are out of their control. And people are just ignoring self-care.
So how can mindset help combat feeling out of control and mental fatigue?
Well, as I mentioned, there's kind of two groups of people. There's people who have a growth mindset where they see something not going the way they want as a failure, as an opportunity to grow, that challenges can help them. And then there's people that have a fixed mindset where they see life as either I'm good at something or I'm not, or life is outside of their control. So even if they put in effort, things aren't going to change. And so what we're finding over time is people kind of look at the world through varying glasses, but there's kind of two sets of glasses. So there's people who see the world as limited, that there's only so much success and they can't have any of it. The fixed mindset, or people who can actually succeed. And the people who have more of this fixed mindset have tunnel vision. They can't see how they could be successful. The growth mindset people, they take chances, they want to collaborate, they compromise. And it's because they can see beyond that and they're not getting stressed by those things outside their control. They pursue their visions. they follow through on decisions. And it's because what we believe we can do, where in contrast, like I've mentioned before, people with fixed mindset, they tend to give up easily because they can't see how they can be successful. They see a mistake as like the end of the world, and they struggle to make decisions or follow through. So I'm curious, Rishabh, we've known each other for a long time, ever since you were quite little. What mindset do you think you have now?
I used to have a fixed mindset because I used to give up on things very easily. But now I've learned my lesson that giving up lowers your productivity rate. I have a growth mindset. For example, if I have a big test coming up, instead of getting worried, I start planning on how I'm going to prepare for it. I tell myself, as long as I'm planning to prepare well, I should do good.
So you're probably wondering, how does one develop a growth mindset? Developing a growth mindset is simple on paper, but is, requires effort and kind of continually reminding yourself. You need to focus on personal improvement rather than perfection or comparison to others. And I think that can be probably one of the hardest things for people in high school, for students, because you're constantly hearing like, I got this grade versus that grade. And the most important thing is comparing and looking for personal improvement. Like you mentioned, studying in small amounts over time, then right before the exam. I don't think there's anything more stressful, and hopefully you would agree, than trying to cram the night before. How does that make you feel, Rishabh, cramming the night before?
It stinks.
Right. And so often, you can be up at midnight, and if you keep studying, are you going to do any better?
Probably not.
Right. And so I think as a growth mindset, you're like, I'm going to make a plan. I'm going to study over time. And then you set yourself up for success. And I think that's the big difference. The other thing that I've found working with students and having the pleasure of working with students like you over a long period of time is everyone learns different. And so if you can figure out how you learn best, then you can use those skills and you can make sure you're studying the way you learn best. And so what are some examples of things you do to help you learn, Rishabh? Can you think of any?
Things I do to help me learn are taking good notes and making study guides.
Yes, absolutely. But not for everyone. I've worked with other students where recording the lesson has worked better than actually taking notes or getting a copy of other people's notes, or being in study groups. Like that's what helped them learn the best. So knowing that, I think something that works for everyone is breaking large projects into smaller pieces, but also making sure you balance things. And so I think with the pandemic and high school demands, it's been easy for people to forget to take time to enjoy their hobbies and ensure balance. And self-care is important. And so sleep, food, water, those basic things we need to remember. Rishabh, do you remember how much sleep does a typical teenager need?
The teenager needs 8 to 10 hours of sleep.
Does the average teenager get that much sleep?
Probably not.
No, probably not. Okay. So next I'm going to talk a little bit about setbacks and how your reaction to a setback is determined by mindset. So we talked a little bit about things outside of our control. So things outside of your control can be world events, which there's been a lot of over the last years. So problems in the world, what other people say about you, what other people do, maybe the format of a test not being the way you expected. Then large events within your family. And so all of those things are outside of your control, and that can result in a setback. When you have a setback, there's kind of 4 ways that people can react. One is to take it as a personal affront attacking you. So you feel that this thing that happened is out to get you, and it's just not fair. The second is, which is really much part of a fixed mindset, is you're just not smart enough or you don't have the ability to learn. And that's often when people just give up. The third is that it's bad luck, and that even if you had tried, you wouldn't do any better. And that's also part of a fixed mindset. And then a growth mindset's response to a setback is, I need to improve my skills, or I need to use this as a chance to learn. I really want to talk about this concept of fair, because this is something I hear every day. And I don't know if you remember, Rishabh, but you often would tell me life wasn't fair because you have 2 siblings, right? So remind me, you have a younger brother and a younger sister. Yeah. And so you would often tell me that things weren't fair because you wanted things to be the same. But the definition of fair is that everyone gets what they need, not that everyone gets exactly the same. And I think when people think of fair, they think everyone should get exactly the same. How tall is your sister about? But is she as tall as you? If I said it's fair that your sister should get everything from the top shelf without a step stool, would that be fair?
Oh, without a step stool? No, that would not be fair.
Right. Do you and your brother need a step stool anymore to get things from the top shelf? What's fair is everyone getting what they need. Usually people can understand it when I talk about height, and being a person who's shorter, I understand it too, because I need a step stool to reach tall things. Some students need extra time because they write slow or it takes them longer to do tests. That's not unfair. It's everyone getting what they need. Some students need to do assignments differently, but people can get focused on things out of their control, which is saying, that's not fair. That person is getting something special when it's everyone getting what they need. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I've not thought about fairness that way before. Anything else before we end today's podcast?
I'm just glad to take an opportunity to talk with you, talk about how it's really easy in high school in general, let alone in today's environment, to feel powerless, stressed, and anxious if you just focus on things that are out of your control. And so the most important thing we can do, and you as students can do, is to get yourself grounded by focusing on things that you can control. And as I mentioned, those are your own personal actions, feelings, how you react to things. Those are things in your control, how you take care of yourself. And then from there, your mindset, how you look at the world, determines how you can react to setbacks and problems. That growth mindset sees mistakes as an opportunity for growth and more learning, and kind of sets you up for success, like you said.
I guess that's about it. That was a very insightful talk. Thank you again, Ms. Joselynne, for being part of our K-Life podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on your show.